Megalopolis. Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Wow. What a disaster. What an abomination of a movie. What did I just watch? I walked in with very low expectations. I'd heard many mixed reviews going back to Cannes in May. I'd heard that some people really hated it. There were a few who loved it or liked it. And I'm just such a huge fan of Francis Ford Coppola's work, going back to The Godfather and Godfather 2, and The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now, and other films he made in the 80s and 90s, like Peggy Sue Got Married, and The Outsiders, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, and there's a lot to like about Godfather 3, even though it is flawed. But I don't know, going into this movie, I had a sinking feeling. I didn't think it was going to be very good, but because of its ambition, and for it being potentially the final feature film by Coppola, I was still hoping. I was like, maybe it'll be interesting at least, even if it doesn't work as a film. Maybe there will be something about Megalopolis that I can take with me that is positive. That's a good thing, but no. There are a few very minor pieces of praise I can give it. It's not like a 0 out of 10, but boy, this was a slog of a movie, especially having seen so much great work at the Toronto Film Festival. Like I've talked about Honora and Baby Girl and The Brutalist and The Wild Robot and Saturday Night and We Live in Time and so many wonderful movies I watched earlier this month. I know Megalopolis played there. It was very hard to see because there wasn't a press and industry screening, and there were basically just two major screenings of the film that were very, very hard to get a ticket to. Like now, it is so freaking clear why there was no P&I screening to Megalopolis. Because it sucks. Because it is a mess of a movie. It is the kind of movie debacle you rarely see these days. Like this specific example of a film just going haywire with multiple storylines and characters that don't really make sense, various images and dissolves and edits and shots that just kind of go nowhere for 2 hours and 20 minutes. I was so completely baffled by this movie. Like why it exists in the first place and why Francis Ford Coppola spent decades developing this project. I don't get it. I do not understand what obsessed him so much about this particular story, because while this film was playing out, I was like, this doesn't feel like the work of Francis Ford Coppola. This feels like the work of a high school senior who's made a couple short films with his friends, who has a very rich father, got access to $100 million and the cast of his choice, and he went and made a movie. Like, this is the same person who made The Godfather. That is wild to me, because in every way, shape, and form, Megalopolis feels like the work of an amateur, someone who hasn't made very many movies, someone who has not made multiple masterpieces. Like all-timer films in the history of cinema, I know Coppola has not made a feature film since Twixt in 2011, and I actually never saw any of those 3 independent films he made between Youth Without Youth in 2007 and Twixt in 2011. I somehow missed those, so I guess the last film he made I watched was The Rainmaker from 1997, and you could see with Jack and The Rainmaker that something was coming undone with Coppola. He wasn't the master filmmaker he had been in the 70s, to be sure, but now we get to 2024's Megalopolis, which I do think will probably be his final feature unless he really surprises us with something in the years to come. And it's so unfortunate because it's like, this is what he's going out with? This movie. This is going to be the end of his cinematic legacy, and I don't think many people even know about, let alone have seen, Twixt. But like, that probably would have been a better movie to go out on, honestly. Megalopolis is such a train wreck, and it's not a fun train wreck. It's not one of those bad movies that are secretly kind of funny, have some moments that are thrilling maybe amidst all of the mess. Like, nothing really works in Megalopolis. The storyline is confused and inept. The acting from almost everybody is pretty bad. Like, nobody seems to know what they're doing, who their characters are all about. The cinematography is really flat, and some of the visual effects look terrible. Like, really subpar green screen kind of scenes where two people are just standing, talking in a shot, and it's so clear they're on a green screen soundstage of some kind. Like, obviously we know when they're up on top of the building and stuff that they're not really there, but you can really tell in Megalopolis. So every moment like that took me out of the movie. There are way too many characters in this to keep track of. So many famous people, so many people from movies we have loved in years past who show up sometimes just for 2 or 3 minutes in Megalopolis, like they're doing Francis Ford Coppola a favor. And I'm like, well, it's nice to see Talia Shire. It's nice to see Dustin Hoffman. But like, they're barely in it. They are non-characters, and I don't know what to do with them, really. So the movie takes place in like a near distant future called New Rome. Adam Driver is the protagonist named Caesar. He wants there to be a utopia. He's like an architect, and he has various relationships with women. They all seem to love Caesar. Aubrey Plaza plays a character named WoW Platinum. That is her name in this movie, WoW Platinum. And like, she has some tricks up her sleeve. She has kind of double-crossed people here and there. Natalie Emmanuel plays Julia, the daughter of the town mayor, played by Giancarlo Esposito, and she has a thing for Caesar. You also have Shia LaBeouf and Lawrence Fishburne and Jason Schwartzman and Chloe Fineman and Jon Voight and Catherine Hunter, and this cast list goes on and on. Again, it's nice to see some of these people, some of whom have not been in a lot of films as of late, but like, how does Coppola use them in the narrative? Often very little, often giving them almost nothing to do. I just don't know what Francis Ford Coppola was trying to accomplish with this movie for audiences. What are we supposed to take away from this experience? The movie just sits there. It never engages you emotionally because you never care about the story and the characters. Like, things happen in the narrative, but there's nothing overly surprising. There's a couple moments of violence in the second act that, again, mean nothing because I don't care about who the Caesar is and what he wants and where he's going in the third act. Now, I have run pretty hot and cold on Adam Driver in recent years. Like, Ferrari, he was decent, but he didn't really impress me in that. And now in Megalopolis, I feel like he needs to shake things up a little bit, because to be honest, his shtick is wearing a little thin with me. It's not coming off as very engaging or original. He just kind of sleepwalks through this movie. He's never that exciting to watch as a performer in Megalopolis. And I think we needed an actor in that lead role in this particular film that had something dangerous about him, something really unique. And Adam Driver, for this character, just doesn't have that in his screen persona. So I did think Driver himself dragged this movie down. Obviously, he wasn't helped with a very poorly written screenplay with scenes just jumbled together all the way through. Aubrey Plaza is an actress I've always adored, and she is terrible in this. I don't know if she got any direction, if she didn't quite know what to make of her character, but she comes off as really stiff, especially in later moments where she is given a little bit more to do. It feels more comedic than most of the other performances. And her final scene, like her last moment in Megalopolis, is so silly. It's so stupid. I'm like, is Coppola trying to make a comedy here? Because for the most part, the movie is deadly serious, and so the conflicting tones throughout the 2 hours and 20 minutes is also very confusing. Nathalie Emmanuel is okay in Megalopolis. I feel like she might come off the best of this cast. I mean, it's not much of a role, but she doesn't do anything that's like spectacularly bad or weird. Like, she just plays mostly a normal character amidst all of the shenanigans of this story. And so she's not memorable or anything, but she's okay in this. I actually think the only actor in Megalopolis who had some energy, even if the character was a bit perplexing at times, was Shia LaBeouf. Like, I wasn't always certain what he was up to in this story, but his performance was at least somewhat entertaining. Like, any scene that he was in, I was paying a little bit more attention, so there was that. In terms of things I liked about the movie, there are some visual effect shots, most of which are in the trailer, I thought looked pretty good. I love the opening logo. That took me back decades to Coppola's earlier work. That was cool. And the very first scene of the movie, I think, works well. The first 2 minutes, I was like, oh, this might be okay. And then about 10 minutes after that, I was struggling. About 20 minutes after that, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a rough sit moving forward. And then at one point in Megalopolis, I thought to myself, this has to be ending soon, right? We're at least in the third act. I looked at my phone. The movie had been on for 1 hour. It had only been on for an hour. And I was like, I thought we were getting close to the end of the narrative. Oh my God. This has another hour 20. Oh shit. Like, this is going to be rough going. And it was. I do think easily, I would say, this is going to be the worst movie of 2024. I cannot imagine seeing something between now and December I think is worse than this. Like, I never want to put myself through this misery ever again. This is one of the worst films I have seen in a long time. Megalopolis has worked for some. I think they give it some slack for being ambitious. So yeah, there is that. Megalopolis is not just some standard by-the-numbers genre movie or something. Like, that also would have been depressing from Coppola. Like, he clearly cares about this subject matter, this story. You can feel his passion for the material, even if it never comes off as good or interesting or engaging in any way, on any level. You can sense that he cares about this. But that doesn't mean Megalopolis is worth seeing. I would say, even if you are a fan of this filmmaker's, even if you like some of the members of the cast, you can totally skip this one. It is 2 hours and 20 minutes of utter boredom and confusion. It is just a total waste of time from everyone involved. I can't believe Coppola was sitting with this project for like 4 decades. I feel like at the end of the day, Coppola in his 80s, with all of those millions of dollars, he should have made his movie, Megalopolis, and then put it away into a vault for nobody to ever see. It would have added this element of mystery to what his final film could have been. But now that it actually came out in theaters and we have all seen it, there is really nothing here. Like, nothing. This is a total swing and a miss. the kind of which we barely see at the theater anymore. I have witnessed some terrible films in my life. Like, I've seen some truly bad movies, and Megalopolis goes right at the top of the list as one of the worst films I have seen in this life. I think this is probably going to win the Razzie Awards for Worst Picture and Worst Director. And you know what? This time, I'm not going to look the other way. This is truly god-awful filmmaking that can win those prizes and show that this kind of vanity project should not have ever happened in the first place. Francis Ford Coppola, he has a legacy that will always endure, for sure, but Megalopolis, boy, what a terrible way to go out. This is an abomination in the history of cinema. In the words of the late great Roger Ebert, I hated this movie. I hated this movie. Oh my god, Megalopolis. Ugh. I give this film a 1 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, did you hate Megalopolis as much as I did? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.